Welcome to From Doubt to Drive, Entrepreneurs Only. Join us on an inspired journey through the ups and downs of successful entrepreneurs. Our hosts, Mario C. Bauer and Florian Schneider, will explore how conquering doubt is essential for entrepreneurs to truly unleash drive. By being a part of our community, you too can learn how to propel from doubt to drive. So tune in, buckle up, and enjoy.
Welcome everybody, welcome back. Hello Florian.
Hello Mario.
So Florian, how you like your steak cooked? Actually?
My steak, medium rare actually, because I believe that is the point where you taste the most out of the steak.
So our next guest, Florian, will tell you if that's the right way to cook. So we have here a very dear friend and a special guest and a quite a funny guest. Welcome, Riccardo Giraudi. Hello, Riccardo.
Hello, guys.
Hello.
How are you?
So for everybody who haven't met the Beefbar yet, I need to give you a short introduction. When we met first, he only had like a handful of Beefbar, but I just learned in the pre-discussion we already over 30 Beefbars operated, and I read that you won a Michelin Star in Hong Kong with the Beefbar, 10 more signed, and overall Riccardo is a successful restaurant brand builder, over 30 restaurants, mainly in Monaco, but also in Paris. And the original business started out of a meat trading business, but we come to that later. Why we picked Riccardo? Because always when we meet, I see that Riccardo is one of the entrepreneurs who is really happy to share his struggles, his roadblock, and is very unscripted. And I think we can learn a lot today from him, because that's a podcast from entrepreneurs for entrepreneurs and helps us learning. But before we come into all the struggles, Riccardo, we start with a warm-up question. And it's basically, if you look back on your career now, Riccardo, retrospective, what was the most joy? What was the moment which really brought you the most joy? Not the most money, not the most credibility, the most joy. What was that moment?
Well, from a career perspective, I guess you mean, right?
Yes.
I have a great life.
I know that. You can have two answers, Riccardo.
But there's so many. Listen, there's so many moments where it's. There's not one specific moment. There's many. It could have been the day that one of the most ironic moments. It brought me joy, not the most joy, but when we gave a Michelin Star to somebody who can't cook. That was me, for example, right? I created the concept. I got the Michelin Star. I kept it for 6 years, and I didn't know what to expect because I can't cook, right? So I just created the concept, and of course, I had amazing chefs, and I understood that, but I just thought it was ironic. That one, or
that's a small achievement. But let's stay on that, Riccardo. What are you able to cook? What is the most you can pull off?
I've actually never tried to cook anything.
Okay,
I said guys, I'm not gonna start.
This is the first struggle already.
That's the first struggle, actually. How you open a restaurant without being able to cook, Riccardo?
I create all my recipes. I create all my concepts. I don't have to cook to be able to eat them, right? And tell my chefs what I would like and how I would like them. And that's how the creativity works. Is I cannot draw a straight line, but I also work with great architects who actually make beautiful restaurants. But so I'm more like an orchestra. I'm more like an artistic director than a chef or a restaurateur, if you prefer, right? So I put people together, I put ideas together, and I just see if my taste works and makes everything work around it. It's as complicated and as simple as that. But that's really a bit of who I am and what I do on a daily basis, right?
That's a nice beginning. I was to prepare myself. I watched yesterday the interview we did a couple of years ago when you opened the Beefbar in Paris, and there
I had a big problem. I thought,
yeah, I remember. And there you said one sentence, which back then I didn't dig deeper, but you said, I was lucky enough to get more chances. You got more chances because you said your parents helped you, which obviously indicated that you failed several times. If we really go, I mean, you're like a very resilient entrepreneur, but what was the moment really where you said, okay, that where shit hit the fan, so to say? What was the moment when entrepreneurial, not privately, when you really thought, okay, that's a deep, deep struggle? Where was the biggest roadblock of Riccardo so far?
There were many. The first one, the really first ones, was when I had to close a few units. So, and that was
when was
the case. That was in 2000. I think I went 14, 15. I closed 3 locations and I've reopened in the same location. But at the time, I did not know. So it was Berlin, it was Dubai, and it was Budapest. So I had 3 failures. But I understood why. I sat down and reflected, and I was able to grow again from that. I've had smaller failures. I've had other failures on the entrepreneur side, in other industries, mainly in the fashion industry, which made me also who I am. But I also learned a lot from failing. But I had lost a lot in that investments, and my parents helped me out. So yes, so I was lucky enough to get back on my feet, and I've learned a lot from that. Tried not to make the same mistakes again, and with regards to the restaurant industry, the biggest struggle probably was COVID. That was I did not know where we were going. I think we already all forgotten about that, but at the time it was dramatic, especially for people in our industry.
Before we come to COVID, because this topic, obviously interviewing hospitality people around the struggles, it comes up quite often. But before we come that, when you closed that 3 restaurants in 3 different countries, and you had to realize that, and you said, okay, there's no more way out, I need to close them. How did you overcome that? Did you sit with friends? Did you isolate yourself? Did you went meditating?
No,
how did you regain strength?
I wasn't depressed.
but still, you were demotivated. You got hit.
Yes, but I knew why. I knew why deep down. I knew there were bad locations, or there were bad management, or the concept wasn't ready. In this case, it was for Beefbar, and I kept believing in myself. And I said, I know that I can change the concept around to make it something much more sexy. And I did. I could find a better location, and I did. And 4 years later, Dubai and Budapest are thriving.
So you used that crisis to get a reborn version.
Yeah, and then I also try to understand why. In our job, when you say, I think it was, I've learned a lot. First of all, when we say location, that's another thing which is clear and crucial, especially when you think that your brand is so strong that you can open anywhere and people will flock in. That's the biggest mistake you can ever do. And a lot of people tend to do that. And then concept-wise, if it's shit, you have to also be able to see, okay, it's not that great. And at the time, the concept was not that great. It was pretty boring. And that's because of those 3 closures that I revamped totally, completely my concept. And that's how it started to grow exponentially since then. Which, it's because of those failures that I put, instead of thinking it was just going to continue working, I said, why not? The concept wasn't as it is today, for many reasons. We can go into the context. That context later, but you do learn from your mistakes, and you do learn from the fact that you cannot always. I was lucky enough to be able to regenerate myself and to continue, but it's not like that for everybody. And so I was also very grateful. That's what I meant to you in that interview. I think it was being grateful.
And Riccardo, when that happens, you immediately capable of reflecting and readjusting, or you need a time in between? Because when that comes, because you said before you're not a chef, but you're a creator. So you give birth with all your energy, with all your drive to that. Because back then you thought it's a great concept, otherwise you wouldn't have opened it. And then you face that trouble, and you have to realize, okay,
yes, but deep down, yes, it's true. But deep down, I knew it wasn't that good. Deep down, I knew I had to find, I needed to find a twist. I needed to give it the direction from being a good restaurant to a great brand. It was a huge step. So deep, of course, I couldn't say it, but I did think about it. I did see it, and I've reworked through it all by myself with my team to give it a new dimension.
Great success now.
Yes, and now it's totally Now, I mean, I don't want to sound arrogant, so I will not go into all this, but Now we, people come to us very often, much more often than before, if you prefer. And of course, it took me 20 years to understand, and I'm still learning so much every day. But I'm probably halfway in my career, and I think it's very enriching to be at the moment of experience as well. I think I'm lucky to have been able to do so much in such a long time. It didn't happen overnight. It's 20 years since the first Beefbar or another brand was opened. So it's a long way.
And did you ever, Riccardo, because you were saying you are actually not a chef, but you made, of course, you opened restaurants and then you closed them again. Did you ever had a thought did you ever think about a situation where you thought, this is not the right business and this is not the right industry I am in?
Never. For the main reason was that, okay, I might have closed 3, but there were already 10 other open that were doing very well, right? So first of all, I could bridge my thoughts that way. And then it's something I enjoy doing, so it's probably the thing I enjoy the most is creating. So that never crossed my mind. What was pissing me off was that I couldn't find the trick to going from good to great, and then I just found it. I changed the whole concept. We can talk about it if you want, but it's because of those failures that I was forced to think outside the box.
I see.
So what does it need to go from good to great, Riccardo? What's the secret sauce from good to great? Because
that sauce also has got something to do with it, but we can talk about the sauce on the secondary part. But what it took, what I can say, it's you had to conceptualize the brand. So it was from a good restaurant to a real concept. And what is the big difference between there's great restaurants, but they're actually great location. And there are some brands that actually are concepts. And from that is a huge difference. If you open a brasserie in the middle of Paris with the best angle on the Seine, you're always going to work. But if you move that brasserie anywhere else in the world, it's not a concept, it's a location, right? So the hard part for me was to understand if my brand is just working because they're in good locations and it didn't work because they're in bad locations, and how can I turn that into concept? Steakhouses, there are millions of steakhouses in the world, and I sell my beef to most of the steakhouses in Europe indirectly through my distributors, right?
Yes.
So I had to change the concept, and I had to find a way that was different. And what I did is I just changed completely the perception of what you'd expect to find in a beef bar. In 2000 up to 2018, you'd expect to find great steaks and mashed potatoes. Of course, we still have great steak and mashed potatoes. Don't get me wrong. But since I've done all of the sharing, all of the street food, since I've hired 8 chefs from all over the world, gave them a contrast, told them, listen, now I'm going to give you the best beef in the world, and you're going to make me the poorest recipe of your culture. Okay, so it's going to be contrast. The evolution of luxury changed as well. 20 years ago, Prada would never make sneakers or a backpack from Chanel. Today we're eating French fries and burgers, and we're making them super gourmet. So I was also at a good moment and a good time in a good industry. So it was all of that. All of this disruption. I dared a lot, to be honest with you. What I've done, I dared a lot. And so yes, I give you kebabs and quesadillas, and I'll give you bao buns and beef sushi, whatever you want. But we try to make it super luxurious. It's very difficult it's very difficult because we dance around the volcano here. You have to give luxury, at the same time you have the simplicity, at the same time you have to have price point, at the same time you have decoration. So it all plays a whole role. It's like a Calder. I always say my favorite artists, Calder, make beautiful, beautiful art pieces where it puts tension left and right, up and down, and then if it just holds perfectly, if one weight is just overweight, the whole thing falls down, right? So a restaurant is a bit like that. It's just like a beautiful Calder. Put it all into tensions, make it work, make it stand, make it take the air, and if it holds, you're lucky, and it's there for long. And that's the kind of idea, right? So, and then you work with different cultures, and what works in one country doesn't work in another. So in our industry, it's And then we decided to make umbrella brands. I look at fashion a lot, and a lot of my competitors, I don't think, look at fashion so much as I do. I come from fashion love. I still have a fashion company. I look at fashion a lot, and the managed to sell t-shirts at 500 euros, white t-shirts at 500 euros, people would still buy them. And I was always amazed. They would complain that my steak would cost $50. Or champagne manufacturers, or brand or winemakers. They understood everything.
They know
you can
how
sell
to
a wine
brand,
for 200, and then nobody complains. And then I sell a steak at 50. The poor animal is like, it's probably 800, 900 grain fed. The farmer is probably 12. He's probably struggling to survive, and gives you the best beef, and people don't accept. So we had to go through all of this, and then so I look at fashion, and I just use their codes to make sure that we can transform them in the hospitality business.
Fascinating. What I find fascinating, Riccardo, is because normally when things are disrupted, they're disrupted by outsiders. But what I always found very impressive, you come, like, your family business, really like high-end meat trading, sourcing. You're also one of the Kobe ambassadors, and you were like grown up with that, let's call them old-fashioned luxury steakhouses, and you disrupted them. And normally it needs an outside view to disrupt it. And my question around that is, like, there's a German word which is called Schwellenangst, which means it's the fear of threshold and borders, because you could have lost a lot. I mean, your family was known for the beef, and then the son starts this beef restaurant, and you could set up yourself for failure, and everybody would have looked at you because you were in the spotlight. You didn't open it in a small village somewhere in France. You opened it in Monaco, in one of the most prestigious locations.
That's true.
You never had this Schwellenangst before, to start to set, like, this fear of, before you jumped and realized that, to say, I put my name there, and you put the credibility of your family out there.
I never had it. But also, me, I'm a very impulsive person. I never had.
You never had doubts in that moment that you could fail in front of all your friends, your society. I mean, everybody knows you there.
To be honest with you, yes, but to be honest with you, I knew the product. I knew it was missing. I could see it. It was obvious. I had the best at the time. People would just sell steaks, which says fillet of beef or ribeye of beef. No story about feeding. No story about branding. No story about breed. No story about it. Nothing. And I knew, and it came from a background where I'd learned so much from my family business that the restaurant, in the meat-centered restaurants, were non-existent in Europe, because you couldn't afford the high quality beef. High quality beef in Europe does not exist in my eyes. Okay, it's very. I'm going to say something that people are going to be shocked about this, but small producers are great in Europe. I'm not saying there's good meat. There's good meat everywhere. If you speak to Italians, they think they have the best beef. If you speak to Germans, they say the same. If you speak to Austrians, they say the same. Everybody thinks they have the best beef in the world. But the truth is, the best beef is the most consistent beef. Nobody talks about the fact that every time you go to order the steak, it has to be the same. Good or bad, but it has to be the same. And we cannot do consistency because of genetics and feeding in Europe. Anyways, I had learned all of this. I'm not going to go into all the reasons how to make a good steak, but I know how to make a consistent steak. And so we imported all of that, and I gave him quantity, and it was just lacking and missing in Monaco. And I put a great architecture. I put a DJ there. I said it cannot not work. Okay, if I opened the same concept 20 years later today, I would fail in one day because of everything that I'd learned and the evolution of it. But in Monaco, there was nothing at the time. There was a Michelin Star restaurants, Italian trattorias, and there was a huge lifestyle gap. You had the customers, you had the people that would go to Hong Kong, to Paris, to LA, and New York, because they would stop here or they would actually live here. And they had only those two choices, if you prefer.
So you knew your market, there was the demand.
And the only job I could find before coming back to my family business was to be an intern at the first ever PR company for restaurants in London during the internet boom. That was in 1998. So I was the PR for China White, Momo's, even Nobu at the end, all of that. So I knew
Hakkasan,
the restaurant industry.
Last time, no?
Hakkasan, yeah. Well, that was later. That's when I did something with Alan Yao. I wasn't doing PR, but but I learned the hospitality at the moment of the internet boom, where restaurants were becoming lifestyle, where lifestyle was getting experience. And so I had, even if it was a short 1 year internship, I had learned that. And I'd come back to Monaco and I said, okay, there's a huge potential here to do lifestyle. Let's start with meat first because I have the knowledge. And that's really how it all started.
Is Riccardo?
So no, I never doubted so much. Yes.
Let's go to a global situation of doubt. COVID, just because you mentioned it before, that is something which actually disrupted the hospitality industry and others quite a lot, but especially ours. How did you overcome that? How did you find a moment in that situation where you say, okay, from that, I doubt that I'm in the wrong industry right now because we are hit extremely hard. And how did you overcome that?
So it was very strange because I was very scared, but at the same time, it was too much to think. It was overwhelming. It's something like you cannot. It was so traumatic for us and for the industry that I was just dozed for like for a few months. It was just shock, right? So you wouldn't really think so much.
But you're the leader. For your
so
staff.
My first thought was, let's look at finances. My whole moment of COVID, that's the moment. Sometimes I wish I was an employee. The COVID was just so freaking tough for entrepreneurs. And imagine in our industry. But thank God, I was in Europe. So we've had all these helps and government subsidies and government loans, and that we could keep going, and we knew that we weren't going to go bankrupt. We will be assured by the government, which was very important. Unfortunately, some of my franchises, because I have own units and franchises who are on the other side of the world, did not benefit from this governmental help, and so I wasn't financially impacted by them because most of my units are in Europe, but we had to be close to the ones that were, right? So luckily there was no one has fallen from that, but and all these restaurants are still open today. But there were great moments in COVID. There were personal moments. There was a moment I created the most. It was the moment where I could sit down and just think through, because don't forget one thing when you talk about hospitality, is that hospitality never stops. It's not like every day you wake up and every day you have a lunch service and a dinner service, and every day you have the same, and it never ever, once it starts, it doesn't stop. And for the first time in my life, it stopped. And and for the first time in my life, I did not have to worry so much. At the same time, we were under a freaking nightmare situation, but it was also, it's like when you reach the eye of the hurricane, kind of metaphor. You go through the hurricane and you get that eye, and all the energy goes down. And I was actually feeling great because I couldn't control anything.
So within that crisis, you actually gained energy and hope in a way?
Struggling and worrying would not help at all, because we would not know where we were going. So I just took it easy and said, well, if all my restaurants closed forever, probably could happen. I did think about it. I'll do something else. It's the moment where your whole life is uncertain. But there's nothing you can do. There's nothing I could do. And so I created. And but the good thing was that I was seeing so many partners of mine contacting me during COVID that they were saying, okay, we're going to do this after COVID, we're going to get. So there was so much hope from all the parties involved, from all of the people in the industry, that it was just a matter of time. We knew that the world would not stop, and that we were seeing, as soon as we saw that the vaccines work, as soon as we saw all of that, everybody was getting a lot more momentum, and
it's a really interesting, different perspective to really also use that as a breather and recalibration. As you said, you're completely right. Our industry never stops. That was like a forced stop, and a lot of people got hit by that, but you also took the moment to use it.
I've never said in my life my restaurants are closed.
Right.
It doesn't work like that, right? And I don't want them to, but it's just it's like if you would have sold the whole business and it would have felt the same the day after, kind of like it's done, finished, boom.
Just the difference would be you somebody instead of taking money from the account would send you money. I have another topic, talking to like a beef boy, so to say, somebody who builds the restaurant and also around meat mainly. How do you see the more and more negative image of beef overall in media, the trend to plant-based food? Do you see that as a threat to your positioning?
No. So first of all, I think I get asked this question every day, which is great.
You're the beef boy and you run Beefbar. I mean, it's obvious.
Of course. But people I embraced all of this plant-based movement. I don't think it's the future. I think it's part of the future. I also think it's when you talk about plant-based, you're also seeing it. There was a huge hype. There's a big return now. It was also a fashionable moment. Our beef industry is the worst at marketing in the world. That we are not interconnected. We'd rather not say than communicate positively. We shouldn't be ashamed to sell beef. And a lot of people, I mean, of course there's problems. Of course the carbon footprint. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to be behind it. But there's one thing that's certain. I still believe we are carnivores. So that's not going to change for a while. Second thing I think we should eat less and better. And this is the only thing I'm doing. The only thing I can do is try to select the best beef producers, try to select the best cuts, try to select the best stories to tell the consumers, the customers. And that's what I can do. That's my role. That's how I see it. Of course, there's going to be people, they're going to say, why? But there are other industries that are much worse and that have better PR that nobody talks about.
So why is it that your industry has such a bad PR?
Because it's oligopolistic. Oligopolistic means there's big players, and it's very strange to say, but it's not perfect competition, the meat world, right? It's a few big players around the world, right? So and I think that their dominant position does let them do whatever they want in a way. But that's for the macroeconomic part. Of course, the smaller producers, they don't even have the money to do that. I mean, great marketing is done by Japan, for example. Japan meat industry does great marketing because of all the education that's reading on the stories. I mean, you do get small producers that do great marketing, but I'm talking in the industry as a whole. Yeah, and the industry as a whole, right? I mean, it shocks me more to ship containers of Evian bottles to the Caribbean than taking Japanese beef to Europe, right? Sorry, but we look at the meat and then we drink the Evian bottle, complaining about the meat, right?
On our holiday,
So there are ironic situations like that. But at the end of the day, also, yes. But let me finish on this note here. I'm not a politician and I'm not a saint. So if I'm a businessman at the end of the day, and if people want meat, I will supply them meat, right? And it's something that's important, I think, also to underline here. I do trade. I trade. It's a supply and a demand, and I don't force anybody to eat them. And I love eating vegetarian, plant-based meat sometimes as well myself. But I think it's all of us that have to ask ourselves the question of the future of meat.
You as an entrepreneur.
I also believe a lot in lab-based, lab-grown meat. I think is part of the future as well. We can talk about that too. I think it's
how far we are there from your point of view.
I am involved a bit with people in the industry simply because they want to know our insight, and I think lab-grown meat is going to be fantastic for commodity, especially for ground and minced. I think we're not going to ever need a Wagyu lab-grown fillet. we might need a beautifully lab-grown chicken McNugget, right? So I think that's more of a logic. I think luxury is just going to be gimmicky. I don't want it to be gimmicky. I think it's going to replace a lot the ground. I think the ground beef will have a big impact, but that will have a huge impact also on our industry, because if we cannot maximize the carcass price on trim, let's call them trim, all the mincemeat, it's going to have a huge impact on the whole carcass, right? So we are a bit worried about that. Should the price of lab-grown meat really go beyond the threshold of natural.
So the next disruption is around the corner for your industry with the
I think it's going to take another decade, but we don't know the size, and we don't know what is the perception. When it comes to plant-based meat, I think a lot of producers wanted to give an alternative to steak, and they called it steak, which was, in some of my eyes, something pretty. I'm not sure. Time will tell if it was a wrong decision or a good decision from a marketing point of view. But if you want a steak, you eat steak, right? And if you don't want to eat steak, you don't eat. Lab-grown meat is real meat. So we are actually, and whereas plant-based meat is more feminine, we already know that the men are more inclined in accepting lab-grown meat. I was totally against it 5 years ago. I would never imagine sitting down with you and saying this. But after having seen it, after having tried, I tried it at Fortnum and Mason the other day, and the founder of Ivy Farm, I hope it's going to become a nice friend. It was somebody that I'd love to speak. That's another guy you should have on a podcast. But he gave us so much insight on, and who the investors are. You have the big players coming into this, so we also know that this is going to be. So I'm very curious. At the same time, I work in luxury beef. Commodity beef might see a problem, maybe, but who knows?
Yeah. Yeah. Riccardo, you are a successful entrepreneur, and you've gone through a lot of things. If I would be a young entrepreneur, what kind of advice would you give me if I'm in a situation of struggle right now? If I see a roadblock ahead, and you with your positive attitude, what is an advice for a young entrepreneur from your end?
The advice is, be honest about yourself, about the vision you have about your business. Don't force. If a lot of people want to succeed, and they know that, or they're blinded by the fact that they have to succeed no matter what, even if they have not such a good product. And a lot of people refuse to see. I refused to see. I had a bad product for many years. Not talking about the restaurants. I'm talking about the fashion. And I was just forcing it into the mouth, feeding it into the mouth, pushing it, and and until I realized I had the wrong product. So first of all, be honest about your vision about your own product, but then also believe in yourself. If I'm doing a new pizza project, it's going to be the biggest pizza project of my life. I talked about it offline with Mario. But I believe when there's a logic and when there's and so my advice is believe in yourself if the product is worth believing for. Don't do the same mistake I did in the first one, believing I had a great product, or just closing my eyes and not admitting, and forcefully knowing.
Don't lie to yourself.
Don't lie to yourself. Because you are an entrepreneur, that does not mean only you need money. You need ideas. You need to take risks. Otherwise, you're not an entrepreneur. Okay, it's just this risk factor. I never considered myself an entrepreneur, but everybody calls me an entrepreneur. Very strange.
What are you? What are you?
I'm a creative director.
You're not a cook. You're not an entrepreneur. So what are you?
I think I cannot define myself. I think that's just yes.
So Riccardo, when the young Riccardo would look at you now, after going through the struggles, but now like building one of the most successful luxury restaurant brand, what would the young Riccardo think about the current version, grown-up version of Riccardo? What would he think?
No, I listen. it's a great question because it's one of those moments where I can look back, right? You're asking me to look back now. And I can look back and I do see, I don't realize it, but I do see and I am very happy and I see my parents happy. This is things that also count for me a lot. And I never feel that I have achieved, but I don't want to sound arrogant, but I don't feel I have achieved because I'm always growing, always looking for more, always looking for more. But your questions, or when they give me a medal or a prize or whatever it is, it's those few moments I can look back and say, okay, what I've done, maybe I haven't made the worst decisions. Maybe I was right in believing in this. Maybe I had the good vision of the beef industry. Maybe I had done the good choices. Maybe I have the best staff. Maybe I chose the right people. Maybe, things like that. And again, we didn't even speak about the staff today, but I think it's for me the most important is the people that I have and keeping them. And, it's great to have good people. It's imperative to keep them motivated. In the beginning, I wasn't motivating them. I did not know. And with time, you learn, especially now in the restaurant industry where you have to beg your staff to stay and where you are now submissive to them in a way. And some people actually tend to do this. I don't. I try to understand what the problem is, and I try to see and help as much as I can. But it's also because of all these people that I'm here. Mm-hmm. So I haven't done this alone. But yeah, I did take the risks. I did take the financial risks. I'm not lying. But then again, in my restaurant, but then again, sorry to interrupt, but then again, I did take the financial risk. I do also have a business model that is a bit different. You're going to have speaking to a lot of restaurateurs, I hope, a lot of other brands, a lot of other successful brands, and a lot of other brands just take the whole risk themselves. I decided to franchise, for example. I decided to lose some control because at the end of the day, you can always say what you want, but the franchisee will always have his word of say. And that's very difficult to envisage because, when you have the really good franchisee, he is so happy, so proud, he gives you money and he understands that he has to pay because you're giving him a great service back, giving a great brand, you're giving great education. Other people think, oh, I'm paying you, so you should shut up. That kind of attitude. So that's the hardest part of my business also. Was maybe when we struggled with partners sometimes and financial partners. But at the same time, you could only grow through franchising because, when you have to put 2 million up to 15 million for a restaurant, how much risk do you have to take? This is how much they cost. Beefbar cost that much money, right? And then you have people that believe in you and believe in your brand and are willing to put it. So I did take calculated risks. And today we are all sharing the profits. Yes, but I'm not the only one. Right? So this is.
And it's also a nice success if it's shared because you have this team around and we talked last time long about that. The stuff you kept so long, you kept close to you grow with them, you grow with your partner, and let's see where we're gonna be the next time. What a funny guy. It's always fun with Riccardo. It's so nice, unscripted and pure. After hangover, getting so much out of it. What do you have on your notes, Florian? What did we learn?
First of all, he started with a very nice quote, which is probably true if you are in doubt, you don't know what to do. He said, you don't have to be a cook to make great food. So you can even have doubts but still be successful. I think it's actually describing quite well.
It's incredible to win a Michelin Star and then saying like, I cannot cook at all. I mean, that's really it's
bold.
It's really bold. What else do we have?
I actually liked when he said when we were talking about the struggles during COVID that he said he felt in a certain situation he felt like within the eye of a hurricane, and there he recalibrated. And it shows that there is hope in such situations where you're actually thinking, okay, this is not gonna go further, and suddenly there's silence, and then you move on, and then you find new ways out. Very interesting. Very interesting.
And I think also the learning is because he said it, and he said, obviously, because we're talking about our industry, he said our industry never stops. There's one service after the other. We don't close. I mean, and there's never a time to reflect. And at the end of the day, in his career, what he mentioned, 2 moments to reflect. Once when he got hit and had to close 3 restaurants, which kind of was like hitting the wall, and COVID. But on the other time, if you think, I mean, actually just should encourage us all to take time out of our day-to-day and use that time and the offside and get out of there to recalibrate, because he needed to have 2 massive hits and struggle to be able to recalibrate. And he said he used that time to go from good to great. It's also great word. From good to great. And he explained us the difference between a great restaurant and a great concept, and also to be as self-reflected and say, I was not good enough. It was not good enough.
That was also when he talked about the advice for entrepreneurs and peers in struggle, that he said, be honest about yourself and your product, but at the same time, believe in yourself. And this is what he did when he closed down 3 restaurants. He actually, he realized that the setup and the product was not right, or the location or whatever, but he still believed to go that way, and he did not quit in a sense. He just restarted. Very interesting.
He restarted, yeah. I still think, and I said that, but I'm still like that he was able to disrupt their own industry. But I think you also need to have sometimes this outside view, which he got probably by doing fashion, because at the end of the day, he applied several tips and tricks what he learned in the fashion industry, and then went into this PR company, and then be able to brand meat, because he came, I mean, we didn't talk about that so much with him, but he came as really a family business of trading traditional beef, and beef was never branded, and he kind of managed to brand it and sell it up within a higher price point. What an interesting story. 40 beef bars out there building this luxury brand. Great guys. From good to great. That's definitely good summary. So we talk to the one Michelin guy who doesn't know how to cook. That's basically the beef boy.
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun, Florian. Take care. Talk to you soon.
Too.
And tune in next week, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Wow, we hope you've enjoyed this episode as much as we did. But sharing is not just caring, it is also empowering. So recommend this podcast to fellow entrepreneurs who might need a dose of inspiration. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you'll never miss out on future episodes. Thank you for being part of the community from Doubt to Drive Entrepreneurs Only. Mario and Florian are already gearing up for the next episode. Until then, stay tuned, stay driven, and we'll be back next week.